Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan. So season 2 of The Mandalorian so far has been a slow burn, and I gotta say I really love it a lot. Sure, they're milking episodes a bit and taking their sweet time, but it's time well spent and highly entertaining. But it wasn't until the recent episode, spoiler alert, when Baby Yoda was munching on some exotic delicacies that I realized why I love this show so much. It's carefree, and despite its very grave and serious Mandalorian protagonist, the TV show still doesn't really take itself all that seriously. And perhaps even more importantly, it's starting to develop its own set of Mandalorian values that are very apparent throughout the entire show, and I gotta say, it's a very pro-humanity message, and you know we love that here on Generation Films. Mando, at his core, is very human. Like all human beings, he's weak and scared all by himself and really does depend on the help of his allies and friends to make things happen. Despite the solitary nature of the Mandalorians and their very antisocial helmet always on rule, Din Djarin finds a way to collaborate and make friends with the most unlikely humans. Whether it's a high-ranking member of the Bounty Hunter Guild who's tried to kill you several times, or a scary rebel shock trooper who ambushes you while you're just trying to have a nice walk through the woods. A lesser man and perhaps a more fearful man would have just struck down these adversaries when he had a chance. But the Mandalorian understands that in a galaxy full of strange aliens and monsters, your fellow humans are basically the only individuals you should really trust. Twi'lek females have always been fetishized by Star Wars fans in many very uncomfortable ways. And that's because Twi'lek females are either sex slaves or some kind of sultry resistance fighter or Jedi with a French accent. And while near-human races like the Twi'leks aren't nearly as repugnant and sometimes even acceptable as friends, it hurts humanity to incorrectly represent an entire species. It's speciest, if anything. But then in the first season of The Mandalorian, we're introduced to Xi'an during the prison break scene. This Harley Quinn knife-licking psychopath is a much better representation of what the majority of Twi'leks were actually like. Talk about expectations versus real life. I mean, what else would you expect from a historically oppressed people whose planet's main industries are slavery and spice? And then we haven't even gotten to all of the dangerous wildlife and weather phenomenon you can find on their home planet of Ryloth. Twi'leks basically evolved on a terrible planet, therefore their physical appearance should also reflect that. There's always been a healthy amount of anti-droid sentiment in the Star Wars galaxy. We first see this in The New Hope with Wuhar, the barman at Cholman's Spaceport Cantina on Mos Eisley. Wuhar, like many war orphans during the Clone Wars period, lost his parents to droids. And so he didn't let C-3PO and R2-D2 inside of the establishment. Mando actually has a very similar experience growing up. Luckily, he was rescued by Mandalorians who turned him into a killing machine that was able to constructively confront and destroy his biggest phobia. Now, of course, as the series goes on, Din Djarin also learns to be more trusting of droids as he becomes familiar with some of the more helpful variants. But of course, deep in his core, he still has a healthy and deeply rooted suspicion of droids and is ready to shoot them right in the memory core on sight. While I personally don't hunt or like killing animals because I just don't want to kill things, I do find pointless and senseless violence towards animals occasionally pretty funny in movies. I know some people are offended and sensitive to this kind of stuff, but you should also be sensitive towards my lack of sensitivity. America. What The Mandalorian gets right is the fact that animals are dangerous, and they are gonna mess up Din Djarin, and so he has to kind of just kill everything, or at least try to kill everything in his path. I mean, whether it's shocking a large sea creature off of your ship, trying to punch a blurg in the face so that it let goes of your arm, or stabbing a mudhorn in the eye so you could steal its egg, or flying into a crate dragon with a bunch of mining explosives so you can steal its pearls, or incinerating a bunch of alien spiders so that they don't eat you. As long as there's something that's crawling or walking that can't speak human, Mando is either gonna kill it or at least try to eat it. Well, unless they have dog-like qualities. Even the fictional representation of violence against dogs or dog-like creatures is unacceptable in my opinion. There's a very wonderful 80s vibe here in how they approach violence with just a lot of creativity and freedom, and I think that's a wonderful thing for this show. And I think it'd also be impossible to do this kind of stuff with a more Earth-based setting. I mean, just imagine a protagonist walking around in the woods punching deer and panda bears in the face instead of fictional alien creatures. It just wouldn't work. But anyway, Din Djarin's epic battle against alien wildlife is a very important lesson for all of humanity to learn. If and when we do encounter wildlife on another planet, don't touch it, don't humanize it, and if you do feel like you need to do something to it, set it on fire before you eat it. Baby Yoda is adorable and probably the best thing to happen in the sequel era of Star Wars. He is universally beloved and most likely will be worshipped as some kind of deity in the near future when human society has collapsed because those meddling dolphins are trying to wipe us out by raising the sea level. But I love how the show portrays the Baby Yoda, not as just some dawdling, adorable thing, but also as a very dangerous and deadly creature. If you think about it, it's a more honest approach. We actually have no idea where this cute and adorable thing has come from. It could be a strand cast for all we know, some genetic force baby that was engineered in an Imperial clone lab. Baby Yoda clearly has the power to do some incredible things like heal people from deadly injuries, stop giant monsters in their tracks, and even choke out Gina Carano with little to no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience. And yes, when he eats things, he oftentimes eats them while they're still alive and squirming. It reminds us that no matter how much we try, we shouldn't judge things that aren't human by human standards. While it might be wrong for a human to eat another individual's offspring, it's clearly okay and adorable for Baby Yoda to do the same thing. What's even funnier about Baby Yoda eating those eggs in that scene is the fact that they are endangered lizard eggs. The Mandalorian doesn't even understand who exactly this lizard lady is, and on Wiki she's just called the Frog Lady. This lack of care of who this individual is kind of brilliant and necessary. We don't need to know background information about her, she's just the Frog Lady. Her appearance tells us everything we need to know. I mean, if the Mandalorian caught Baby Yoda eating another species' offspring, he would probably tell the parents and make it into a huge deal. But in this case, it's just some cold-blooded frog alien, so it doesn't really matter. There's more important things for the Mando to focus on, and learning the language of a talking lizard is just not in the cards. It should be mentioned that Misty Rosas, who does an excellent job at portraying Frog Lady, also plays Quill. That's the Ugnaught voiced by Nick Nolte in the first season. Quill was a pretty awesome character, but he ultimately dies at the end of the first season, not because his death was necessary to move the plot or inspire individuals or create some kind of gravity to the situation. It was because, again, he's not human, he's just some tiny pig Ugnaught. And then shortly after, his reprogrammed IG-11 also dies in a final act of sacrifice. Are you starting to notice the trend? Humans generally don't die, but the aliens and droids do. We see the same thing happen when Din Djarin starts taking pot shots at the Jawas with his powerful disruptor rifle. He kills like half a dozen of them and completely disintegrates their bodies. The Jawas are a bit upset by this, but nowhere near as much as they should be, and they're still willing to make a deal with them afterwards. We see this happen again when the Tusken Raiders and the people of Mos Pelgo go after the Krayt Dragon. Time and time again, the Tuskens are used as bait, and it's hilarious. They're the only ones getting killed and swallowed up in massive numbers, while the human miners more or less escape unscathed. The reality is alien life is cheap, especially aliens that we don't understand. Humanity is what's important, and that is a very big strength to this show's message. Despite having some pretty strong prejudices and stereotypes against aliens and robots, the Mandalorian at the end of the day is a pretty fair individual. He reminds us that although it's important to protect humanity from the degenerate Xenos, not all Xenos are bad, and some can even be trusted and befriended. I bring up Quill once again. Despite his little pig-like stature, befriending the Ugnaught was a beneficial move for the Mandalorian. So was the Mandalorian's most important action of saving Baby Yoda. Although we never condone violence between human beings or racism or stereotypes, the Mandalorian made the right choice to kill a bunch of stormtroopers in order to save the life of an innocent alien baby. The Mandalorian understands that even though the Corellian bounty hunter watching his back is human, even humans can be dicks from time to time. And so while the Mandalorian might have a very rigid code and rigid view of the various species in the galaxy, he's also a fair individual who's willing to judge each alien and human being as an individual, which is probably the most important lesson of all. So there you have it, guys. Those are 7 lessons that I believe that The Mandalorian is doing a really good job in imparting to its viewers. I think it's beneficial for both the viewers and also the Mandalorian people, should they want to come back together and create a society and maybe go on some crusades. It'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below. Also, let me know in the comment section below if I've missed any kind of hidden messages in The Mandalorian that you believe are very important for the fan base to know about. And as usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie and you are the protagonist.